Good morning, everybody. We are here at the rapids that Rapids Road are named for, and it's one of my favorite places to come, and I thought it was just a peaceful place to start the video. We're going to do things a little differently this week and experiment a little bit to try and upgrade the quality of the videos and reach another step in our process. And I want you to just start by thinking about the fact that you're part of something bigger. As Christians, we believe that this isn't an accident. There's method to what we see before us, and to me, all this beauty that we see ahead of us tells us that we're not alone. That there's something else that we're part of here, and that it's bigger than we are. And so I want you to take a minute and get to know God through God's creation. I want you to take a minute and just leave your baggage at the door. Some of us are busier, some of us are less busy. We're all anxious, and we all need just a time to unwind and relax. As the psalm says, be still and know that I am God. So I want you to take a moment, just breathe in and out deeply a few times. Sometimes it helps to count to 4 while you breathe in, and count to 8 while you breathe out. Just breathe in God's peace and breathe out your stress and your baggage. Do that a few times. I want to just have a chat before I give you my exercise. We're doing things a little differently. I'm trying to improve the videos a little bit and improve the online church format a little bit. And one of the things I found, I'm trying not to give you typical prayers. We're not in church on a Sunday with me in the pulpit and you guys in the pews. And so to me, prayers in a format designed for that, just it doesn't seem fitting. You guys are at home, and I think you should have some kind of spiritual exercise that matches that. So I'm trying to give you exercises instead of prayers. And I think these exercises, they are in themselves really prayerful. I'm trying to give you something that will lead you through a more personal prayer. And so I want to just talk to you about prayer journals, because I find more often than not, I'm asking you to write your hopes and your dreams down, and I'm asking you to do little doodling exercises and things like that. And I think it's probably I think I should probably just double down on that and say, if you've got a notebook or a way to collect the papers you're using, I think it'd be really good to have a collection if you're not doing it already. I really like, I'm not suggesting that you use this, I'm just showing you what I've got. But I really like these Moleskine notebooks. I just like the cover material. And the size, it just works for me. So I splurge on them. They're a little expensive. I splurge on them and get a couple a year and use that. And it's not just and I like a fountain pen. It makes me happy to write with. I like the ink and the way it flows and the way it feels, and it's a nice experience, and it sort of makes it enjoyable to sit down and write. And I don't even have it. That's the only book I have that has everything in it. I sort of have a page for every day for my notes. If I go to a meeting, I'll have a page for the meeting. If I have a project I'm working on, I'll have a page for the project. I just date it, and then whatever is on that page that I'm working on, and I can go back and look at it. I've got all the old ones in a drawer down in the basement, and I can go back at, 2017 and see what I was doing on, such and such a date in 2017. And that would work for a prayer journal. Like if you have a journal like that, go ahead and just, why don't you try putting your prayers in that? And then you can keep track of them. You can sort of work with them. But if you want your own book, if you have a spare book, or you want to go get one or whatever, I'd really encourage you to do that, because more often than not, I'm asking you to do these written exercises, and I think there's something to it. So I'm going to ask you to do more, and I'd really encourage you to make a book your own. Anyway, that's my spiel. And this morning, I'm going to ask you to use that. You can use a piece of paper, or you can get a book if you've got one, whatever you need to do. And what I'm going to ask you to do is draw. And that doesn't seem like a prayer. But our opening prayer is, the goal of an opening prayer is adoration and confession. And the way I would phrase that is sort of recognizing who God is, that God is bigger than us, that God is sort of beyond our comprehension in a very good way, and recognizing who we are, that we're humans, which is great, but we have limitations. We mess up and we misunderstand, and we need to tap into something bigger than ourselves in order to work towards this good thing. And so what I want you to do is look at this orchid behind me, this purpley pink flower. Not the penguin. This is Penelope penguin. There's no story. That's just Penelope. But I want you to look at this flower and try drawing it. And the reason I want you to do that is to just, there's this idea that we're the image of God, Imago Dei. And I think there's something really important about that word image, because there's the real thing, even just on the screen. You're seeing this on YouTube, so you're seeing something different than I'm seeing, but I can look at it in 3 dimensions, and I can look up close. This is the real flower. And when you go to draw it, and I don't care if you're a good artist or a bad artist, you don't have to show anybody. This is just for you. But when you go to draw it, you're going to have a representation of the flower. You're not going to have the real thing. And you could do a flower in your yard. You could do whatever you want. This was created by God. This is something so much bigger than we could create. And we're creating an image of it. And that's kind of like God and people. We like to call ourselves images of God, but images are not the real thing. They're a representation, they're something else. And I think there is something very adoration and confession about that. And so I'm going to invite you to just pause the video. I'll get out of the frame in a minute, and just pause the video and maybe try drawing something you see here. You can draw something in your own home if you want as well, but the point is something natural, something that we as humans could not create. And try making a human creation of it. It could be a really beautiful drawing. Not if I did it, I'll be honest. But it could be something really beautiful, but it's not the original. And I think that's just something that we should reflect on. God can work with that. God can bring great beauty out of the image. But it's different than the original. So we're talking about Matthew 13, 24 to 33, and then continuing 36 to 43. And you could read the whole chapter. If you did last week, you're ahead of the game, because it's the next parable from last week. And what we've got is, so it's Matthew 13, and in 24 to 30, we've got the parable, and then in 36 to 43, we've got the explanation. So you can click in the link to Bible Gateway, or you can read it in your own Bible. And I wanted to start by going off on a tangent for a minute, and I want to tell you about this. You see a minister waving around a thick hardcover book, and you might think it's the Bible, but in fact, it is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And I got to read this again. I haven't read this in a long time, and it's an easy book. I really should, and maybe I will. But I quote it a lot, and there's a lot of images in there that have just kind of stuck with me in a way that helps me imagine my theology playing out, if that makes sense. And one of the ones that sticks with me, I've talked about it before, is this idea in the book of an organic computer. So the idea was there were some beings in the world that wanted to know the answer to life, the universe, and everything, you know, the eternal question. And what they did first, they built this regular computer that we would recognize as a computer, and it spit out the wrong answer. And so they decided to try again. They realized the computer was right, but the input was wrong, and they needed to ask a different question. And this time they decided to build what they called an organic computer. And as the book goes, Earth is an organic computer, the organic computer designed to solve this problem. So everything historically, culturally, evolutionarily, geologically, whatever, everything that shapes us up to this point was designed to answer this question. It was leading to answering this question. And what I really like about it is actually the movie. I'm not a big fan of the movie, but the movie captures this particular bit really well, is the moment when the computation was done, or the calculation, whatever, was done, was just this woman sitting in a cafe. She was just sitting in a cafe, doing a crossword or something and having a coffee. And she just goes, oh. Like she just has a thought. And she's thinking about it. And that's the answer. So this computer's been running for, I think it was 1,000 years or something. And she just, it pops into her head. And the whole thrust of human history had been moving towards that point. And I love that image. Especially, I really like it for when we're thinking about moving into the next age from a biblical perspective. You know, it's tough talking about apocalyptic writing and eschatology and everything, but it's really important because I think that the thing that keeps me going is this thought that as a Christian, I am working towards a world that is perfect beyond my imagining. You know, we can each imagine a perfect world, but it's going to be different, and it's going to be incomplete, and there's going to be blind spots and problems because we're people. I'm a person, you're a person, we're limited. We have limited perspective, we have limited information at our fingertips. There's only so much we can do. If we want a truly perfect world, we have to go to a being or whatever. I don't like to put limits on what or who God is, beyond ourselves. We need something else's imagination. We need God's imagination to imagine this perfect world. I think that's really important. And that's to me what we're working towards. And so this image of arriving in a perfect world, and there's a lot of really tough metaphors for that, you know, fire and wars and blah, 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 blah. But I kind of like, I've got it in my head, an image very similar to the one in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where, you know, if one day we just kind of look around and we're there. You know, we're just sitting in a cafe and we go, wait a minute, we're here. You know, I think about that phrase, I don't think Gandhi actually said it, but it's attributed to Gandhi, be the change that you want to see. You know, if we just were the change that we wanted to see, would we just find ourselves in that world? I'm going to switch gears for a minute, and I want to talk just about rhetoric. This is a tough passage. With Matthew, everything's really black and white. You win or you lose. You're in or you're out, etc. And he talks about good seeds and bad seeds, wheat and weeds, and that's really useful for Jesus standing in front of a crowd trying to communicate, because they didn't really write things down. Like, they didn't have newspapers in those days, and they didn't have smartphones and cameras and all that kind of stuff that we have today. So if you said something, you had to have a way for it to stick in people's heads. It had to be simple, it had to be memorable, and that's why these parables were really useful. So, Jesus would just say something really simple, and Matthew has probably put his own rhetorical spin on it for his audience over time. And so, it's very black and white. But I want to ask you, how much of that is rhetoric and how much of that is the actual message? What is he getting at here? Is Matthew talking about, the devil sliding in and planting bad seeds among the wheat? Is he talking about things actually being black and white, or is he getting at something else? The thing that jumped out at me, I've always got the church's garden on my mind. We've got this great teaching garden, and, we're trying to show environmental ethic and be sort of on the cutting edge of planting and home food production and things like that. And one of the things we've got is pollinators, but pollinators are often native species. They're often weeds. They're often, weeds aren't always necessarily a bad thing. They're not where we want them to be. And that may be that may just be an offshoot of us doing things in an ordered human way. I don't know if you can see, I didn't do this on purpose, but I've got Sapiens here, and he talks about that quite a bit. That might just be our agricultural way, but I don't want to get into that. The point is, nothing's good and bad entirely, right? It's all gray area in between. And so when you think about Jesus dividing the good seeds and the bad seeds, he's got this really beautiful image of just letting them grow together, which I think is really important. And then at the end, he's talking about, when the new age comes, I'll divide them, and all the bad seeds will go over here, and there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Well, what is weeping and gnashing of teeth? I like to think of it as simply living with the consequences. If you have sort of built your life around a world that is imperfect, when perfection comes, that's going to be really hard. I think there's weeping and gnashing of teeth going on right now. For instance, in Canada, there's a lot of people dying from the virus and sick from the virus in nursing homes. And, we knew that was a problem. Anybody that's got any relatives in nursing homes is usually not happy with the way things are going. We're not good at nursing homes, and we weren't doing anything about it, or not fast enough anyway. We weren't putting money where we need to put money, and we weren't prioritizing it. And so the virus has come along, and it's just ripped through nursing homes. We're living with the problem that we created. We're living with the consequences, and now we're weeping and gnashing our teeth. I don't think it's necessarily that Jesus puts us there. I think it's that when Jesus brings justice and shows us what's wrong, we have to live with our mistakes. I think that's what the weeping and gnashing of teeth is. So, to start swinging back to the beginning, this is the question that I really want you to ponder. You're at a dinner party or something. Imagine that, right? Seems far off now, but you're at a party or a family gathering, whatever, and someone starts talking about politics in a way that you find particularly off-putting. I don't think that's hard to imagine right now, because we're very polarized as a culture. We're sort of gathering, Canada used to, I think, I'm only 33, but I think Canada sort of used to be more center, right? There's, everyone was kind of more in the middle, and what's happened is we're polarizing. We're the left and the right are moving apart, and it's become this sort of war that I don't think was there before. And so that's not hard to imagine. We've got people that are just we disagree with so much. And, we or other people end up sort of spouting off, and it just becomes this issue. Or maybe you're online. How many of us become keyboard warriors on Reddit or Facebook or, Twitter or whatever? Can be really toxic places. So you bump into one of these people that you really, really disagree with. Do you argue with them? So you've bumped into this person that you really disagree with. Do you argue? I think this passage says something really interesting about that, because it says, let the weeds, and notice I'm being very careful not to say which side is weeds and which side is wheat. But, it's saying let the weeds and the wheat grow together. I thought originally I was thinking about pulling out weeds, and I thought maybe you damage the soil, but apparently the weeds and the wheat were hard to distinguish. So it was easy to end up pulling the weed out. You're going to damage your crop by trying to pull the weeds is the metaphor here. So it's better to just let them grow. Let them grow together. Let things fall. Trust that God is doing something and that good will prevail. Because here's the thing, if we start arguing, we're introducing conflict. There's a lot of argument, right? There's a lot of discussion and argument about whether we should argue with these people we disagree. And particularly right now, there's some stuff that's just out there that's just wrong. Like, it's just factually wrong. And it's just ideologically motivated. And it's really problematic, and it's causing some major problems. So I think the urge is to set things straight, to bring facts to the argument and set things straight. There's no answer. There's no full, proper answer to this right now, and I've been looking for a while right now. But to argue usually just feeds the fire. If you argue with someone that's being very bullheaded, one, you're just going to further entrench them. They're probably not listening to you anyway. They're probably frustrated with you if you disagree with them. And what that does is just, it kind of draws a line in the sand further. So it's not going to help them. It's just going to make them more of that opinion. There's argument as to whether bystanders will see the argument and people on the fence are going to sort of move off the fence. And that may be true, but that's a double-edged sword. That could sort of pull people onto your side. It could push them onto their side. It's really hard to say. But then there's the other argument of just, we need to be advocates. We need to put our thoughts and ideas and sort of wear them, put them out there. But you know what? I don't think a political argument or an argument about vaccinations or whatever, it's probably not going to help. And I'm a bit of a hypocrite here, because I enjoy a good argument, and I have a hard time letting certain things go. And I think I'm in a position as a minister where I need to stand up for stuff, but maybe I don't, right? This is my point. It's hard to discern. But I guess my question is, are you going to get anything out of arguing? Is that going to further the cause? And I think there's evidence and thoughts that it won't, that it might hurt. This passage, I think, would sort of have us say, and I want to be clear, Jesus was not a pushover. Jesus got angry. Jesus, what would Jesus do? Flipping tables is always an option. but he's also suggesting that we let the weeds grow with the wheat. He's saying they can grow together. He's saying that God's bigger than us and God's in control. I'm definitely not saying lie down. But I do wonder if there's sort of a calm, discerning middle road that we're searching for as more than Christians, but I think especially as Christians we should be searching for. This middle road of just going, okay, what is my role here? What is my calling? Instead of arguing, what can I do to further building the kingdom? Amen.
We're at the part of the morning where we're going to share with God our hopes and our dreams. I'm going to invite you to get a piece of paper or your prayer journal or whatever, and just take time to write down the things that you'd like to see, the things that you hope for, and the things that you're thankful for. And I like the idea of inviting God into the process and writing them down, because you can look back on them later. You can sort of keep track of them from week to week and engage more than just your mind in it. And so I want to invite you to just take a minute and just jot down the things that are on your mind, both positive, negative, potential. Just take a moment, share them with God the way you need to share them. What I'd like you to do now is, just as we close, take a moment and listen to what your brain or your body or whatever feels the urge to do. Sometimes our bodies have wisdom that we're too busy thinking to notice, and I just want you to think about what comes naturally to you. What do you naturally feel inclined to do? And then I want you to think about how you can put that to work. How can you take that and fit it into God's great plan for life, the universe, and everything?